Salam, shalom, siemi, greetings, Israelites and Gentiles, whether you are grafted in or you know who we are as a people or you know who you are as a bloodline. Welcome. And if you've clicked on this video, you've seen an interesting um, picture. And that picture was depicting warfare and Israelites. So, all throughout this time, America always likes to say we're such a great nation. You know, we won all these wars, we've done all these things. And what America doesn't like to actually recognize is that they are only able to be successful is because of us. And they'll never say that, but they know it. And the reason I bring this on up, especially in this day and age, is because, see, we have to understand the issue of what's going on in this society when we are breaking down or deconstructing the systemic racism and how the systemic racism has been evolved to where it's at right now. See, we always like to listen, and we've liked to listen to their narrative because when we're asleep, guess what? You listen to the sounds of what's going on in your environment because your body's just asleep, you know? Ambiotic music, all these things to kind of mellow you and do everything else. Well, that's what we have when we see in our sleep because we're looking at different movies and different media that shows a narrative that's outside of the realities of what this nation has actually gone through or undertook with our involvement in the wars and conflicts with the United States. So just to kind of give you an overview, from 1619, when we got off the boats, 1619 to basically 1776, you can argue even sooner, but America was founded and had maintained its foundation of its wealth, worldwide wealth, through the enslavement of Black people. And that's not a secret. What we didn't understand was that the wealth that we created at that time, it was being distributed in a worldwide system per se. And so that system was the money was going to England, and then England would be the ferry point of that money to the other Western nations, and then that would ferry on out to their endeavors within the worldwide economic infrastructure. So what happened was that this nation they realized, well, why do I need to go through the middleman when I can just do it all by my own? I can do it all myself. And of course, that naturally produced a conflict, a war, and that war led to the quote unquote independence of the United States. It was a Revolutionary War. So the Revolutionary War was just that it was a revolt from the powers that be that established the monetary influence of what you see right now, actually, the monetary structure of what you see right now. So we had the economics come into play, but the manpower really wasn't there for the United States. It wasn't. So it started in my opinion, it started in the Revolutionary War where we always are promised something to fight. And just let that sink in. And this is, you can get countless um, articles and things of that nature if you just YouTube it, or excuse me, not YouTube. You can do YouTube or you can Google that information. It'll show you those specific bills or draft papers and things of that nature that historians will like to use, but then they'll mysteriously hide it away for a rainy day, in that particular aspect. And so we've seen it, we've understood it, we know the stories of it. Look, in the American Revolution or the Revolutionary War, um, they went to black folks. They went to the black folks on the plantation. Hey, fight for us, and we'll give you freedom. Fight for us, and we'll treat you right. We'll give you a little something. We'll take care of you. Because why? We don't need to be working as hard to pay the taxes to England because we're just going to be self-sustained, self-reliant. All men are created equal. Yeah, that sounds good. And then in reality, they weren't talking about us as all men. So we see the wrangling, the jargon, and all the other things that we have had dangled in front of us only to be pulled back. And I would even argue that if America were to go to conflict today, I would argue America would probably say, listen, for black folks that come to war, come to conflict, we win this thing, guess what? We're going to give you all some reparations. Notice some, not all reparations. They'll say that stuff. We said some reparations. Well, if we gave you all reparations, that couldn't sustain America. Well, that reparations had to be tailored down to, something substantial, but it wasn't really meeting the mark. They could literally say, look, we've reparated you for $1. That's something. But is that adequate? So I'm not going to diverge into that because that's going to be in another teaching here pretty soon. But I wanted to focus on warfare because warfare is the economic muscle of the United States. So getting into this, warfare in the Israelites. Why? Why? Has anybody ever thought about that? Why is America so hard up on always having a conflict, always having a battle? I like to thank Pastor Omar because um, he had touched on this subject in his series about Edom. And recently, when he did a series about Edom, he was talking about um, warfare and conflicts and Israelites, and he had touched on World War I. And I'm glad he touched on World War I because World War I was actually very, very specific to kind of the same issues that's going on today. All right, so if we go on down the line, this isn't just limited to my list. Trust me, there's a lot more conflicts and situations that are in there because obviously there's the Korean War and things of that nature. But I wanted to kind of touch in on some of the major wars that were big for Black people, for Israelites. And so the Revolutionary War actually showed, okay, we have a formidable force with Black people. Oh wow. Why is that? Because these folks can fight. Uh-oh. Well, they can fight. So it's the good and the bad. You have to take the good, you have to take the bad. So um let's get them back into the field and let's kind of do away with that generation. We'll give them some things, some trinkets, things of that nature. We're big on trinkets. We're big on symbolisms. Oh, okay, well, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And guess what? That generation dies off. Now you cue in War of 1812, whole Francis Scott Key and everything else, the four stanzas of the Star Spangled Banner, and the continued enslavement. And it was the kind of nice try, Britain, to try to retake America. But we got our black folks, they fought for us, and it's here to stay. And those other black folks that tried to fight for substantial freedom, not something circumstantial, but something substantial, they lost. And stanzas 3 and 4 express that. So again, during the quote unquote, antebellum time frame that's actually going on right now. And after the War of 1812, America is making its money tremendously. So if America is making its money tremendously, all right, I'll throw in a couple pennies, I'll throw in some stuff. Because black people aren't dumb. We're not dumb. We're just not free. We're enslaved. Doesn't mean that we didn't have a brain. I mean, we had analytical thought. We could deduce some things. Okay, these folks are making money, but we're just still living like this. Oh, don't worry, you're gonna get there. You're gonna get there. All right, get some preachers in the sweet by and by. So why do you think between 1812 and Civil War, you had all these slave revolts happening at that time? They're not going to tell you that. That's history. They try to sweep that on over. Ooh, the slave revolts? No, no, no. And then you look at history that's there. I'm not going to put it on in there. You can Google it, research it. It's all out there. So in order to try to quote unquote contain us, okay, let's bring in some preachers. And then they got messed up with Nat Turner because he was reading and preaching the word of God, and he found out, oh man, we're Israelites, but he didn't really understand. And I feel sorry for him. I really do. He didn't really understand that he was about 200 years too soon. But you got to give him credit, but it was just 200 years too soon. So I don't know. I don't know. You have to think about that. Oh, what would you do? Just think about that. What would you do? I have my thoughts, but I will not share them, especially on this platform. But what that actually led to was the Civil War. From the War of 1812, it led to the Civil War. And see, the Civil War was something that was fomented because, listen, we were crying out at that time. We were getting preached to. We were understanding it. Listen, I still remember my brother telling me about my uncle, and my uncle being born in like the early 1900s. And he had told my brother who we are, that we were the ancient Israelites. And he was a preacher. He was an ordained minister. But it wasn't very popular at that time. So it just kind of went over my brother's head. And even to this day, he's still not awakened. So maybe it may go over his head forever. I don't know how the Most High does things. But you have to understand, listen, that didn't just come from my uncle, but that was something that was carried from way, way, way back, because we still have customs and mannerisms and traditions that we had before the Civil War, that honestly, we kind of lost that. We lost most of it right after the Civil War. So from the Civil War, Black folks were actually doing something. We were creating. Because why? Because we had all the tools. Okay, well, guess what? I finally got a chance to get up on out of being enslaved. And now, while I'm still captured, so I'm still sojourning in captivity, no longer in chattel slavery, but more a freer version of captivity. So if I have black people in a freer version of captivity and they're actually making money, I need to do another game plan if I am the captor. So what's that game plan? Well, I honestly believe America stumbled on it back in the early, um, late 18th, or excuse me, late 18th, 19th century. That's when America, early 20th century, excuse me, late 19th century, or early, yeah, late 19th century. That's when America discovered, okay, well, we need to kind of shore up our allies within our Spanish speaking residences, that's our neighbors here in this Western hemisphere. And then you had doctrines to try to, pad and insulate America because America knew at that time that it was very weakened. It was very weakened. It was economically, militarily, politically, it was weakened. It was in a weakened state. But as America was in a weakened state, guess what? Black people actually, we were doing things in their weakened state because we actually had some economic muscle and drive. And again, we were the artisans, we were the carpenters, we were all of the resources, plumbers, engineers, hands. We did it all. So what we did, we took our talents and we enclaved within ourselves, and we had places like Greenwood. But also at the same time, we had to do other things, especially during the Spanish American War, to try to prevent other countries from taking advantage of us. And that was clear that Spain, they wanted Florida. They did. That was the whole purpose of Teddy Roosevelt going down to Cuba. They wanted to launch their beachhead. Look it up. This is historical fact. Launch their beachhead from out of Havana, take over Florida, and then Florida would have just been in a Spanish colony again. Oh, because they were sore when they got rid of Spain because they lost Spain to the English about 150 years earlier, before the Revolutionary War. This is all historical fact. So what that actually showed was that during these peonage laws and all these black folks that had been captured because of, all the Jim Crow and everything that started to become established, black people became a new source of warfare. And it wasn't necessarily warfare amongst ourselves, because I would argue we would probably have, at that time, we had, and as a people, still generally as a people, we're one of the most loving people amongst ourselves. We actually are, barring any type of negative influence on us. Okay, this is just basic economics. Now, people will love themselves as a people because they know who they are as a people, barring any type of negative influences. So we hadn't yet been bombarded by negative influences just yet, because what occurred during that Spanish American War, it showed that black folks can fight. And then during World War One, I go back to Pastor Tebow's teaching, and he was showing, the dynamics of how the teaching, of how we got there in his teachings. So we understand how we got there, but they didn't understand this. They didn't understand how deadly we are. See, we hadn't really been organized to be on our own as a fighting force until about World War One. And that's what World War One showed. World War One showed that, man, black folks can fight. And wow, they can fight incredibly. So I'm going to get back to World War One because World War One sets a precedent. World War Two, it shows, okay, we need black people because we saw what they did in World War One. Vietnam War, they were still trying to figure out what they were trying to do with this, because after World War Two, black people were kind of in a different, we're kind of in a quandary, it was in a situation. See, World War Two actually showed, and it was the Civil Rights Defense Act. Basically, it gave black people the same type of civil rights footing that eventually made its way to the Civil Rights Act. And so that was actually first adopted after World War II, because they know we still will need them in this conflict. And if we need them again, and we will need them again, we will need to have something substantial for them, instead of them just being like, well, we're all out here in our lonesome. We can be killed by our troops, or we can be killed by our enemies. What's the difference for us? Because there have been numerous skirmishes between white soldiers and black soldiers, especially when it came to pubs and drinking establishments within World War II, especially in England. That's why I always tell people, look, American society is different, because here's the thing. Europe only goes off of what America does in terms of racism. You don't have racism in this world without the influence of American diplomacy and support for racism. Look it up. I'm not lying about this. Look this on up. Because if that was the case, why wouldn't there have been that much racism, or wouldn't there be the same amount of racism in World War II Britain as you would have in World War II America or France? Black people in World War II, they're like, forget this. I'm staying in France. I'm going to rebuild this. And you would actually have many different professional sports players within France and Germany and things of that nature that were a couple generations away from an American soldier that just stayed there from World War II. So they had to kind of evolve that, because they didn't want to have black people just saying, look, we just want to stay because there's nothing going on for America. Oh, well, we got to make sure that we're gonna evolve. We're gonna roll the ball. Okay. Now we're gonna give you something. Okay. But even when we came back, that's why the Korean War was still murky, because it was like, okay, we came, we fought, we got just a little bit of something, but we didn't get the whole shebang, you know? And so the Korean War, I didn't even really mention that, it just kind of tied the knot that if you don't have enough black people and black support, you will always have a stalemate. And this is what North Korea and South Korea represents to the United States. Don't believe me? Look it up. It's always been a soreness, because they just thought mainly most white people thought, well, we can just do it by ourselves. We really don't need them. They need to go back. They need to rebuild our economy. We'll get this war here by ourselves. So for 4 years, they lost. They lost. They don't want to tell you that they lost. They just say, well, we have a DMZ. No, they lost. Well, the fight still rages on 60 some years later. No, you all actually lost. So that's why the setup for the Vietnam War was a little bit different, because they knew I couldn't fund the Vietnam War unless I had black people have quote unquote civil rights. So we'll carry on the illusion for civil rights in Vietnam War. Then the illusion got stronger during the Gulf War. Oh man, we're all together. Everybody's in this. And then I think, honestly, the breaking of the illusion and the facade started in Operation Enduring Freedom, even to this very day. That's what I would argue. And again, this is my opinion. And I love to hear your comments in the comments section to explain to me otherwise. But I like to go back to World War One, because on that picture it shows in the second bullet, that's William Henry Johnson, and I'll get to him. But the actual overall picture, it shows the Harlem Hellfighters of the 369th Infantry Regiment, and so that you had a lot of valor and heroism, and these are just some of the men that fought. And one of them was Sergeant William A. Butlers. And so he led a raid to free 10 captured Americans that were on the other side. The Germans had snatched one up, because when they would do those raids in World War One, they'd do the raids, they'd go through the trenches, and then they snatch up American soldiers. And that's how they would try to have that type of psychological warfare when they're taking our soldiers. So what happened? He led the raid. He snatched up the soldiers that had been taken. He actually killed about 21 Germans, and then he also captured a German lieutenant. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And so I think for him, he actually had like the highest honor in France, the highest French honor that could be awarded, and that was in France. Again, here's the thing. In World War II Europe, the French didn't really they saw color, but the racism wasn't as embraced until you had what? More American diplomacy added to the mix. So I would actually argue with you that Europe has only endured under American white supremacy. They've endured about 80 years. And I'm telling you this is why this goes into the prophetic, that Europe doesn't necessarily like the racism that they have to endure due to diplomatic relations or relationships. So just let that kind of sink into your head, because I always try to tell people, look, yes, is Europe racist? They're racist, but they're not as racist as the United States. And there's a reason for that. But I digress. So William Henry Johnson, he was also posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. And he was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor in 2015 after several attempts for him to be awarded the Medal of Honor fell through in 2002 and in 2012. Those are the recent ones that have fallen through. But this man, this Israelite, if you look at certain stories, I don't even like to go through, because this dude made everybody jealous because he fought with his bare hands over 100 Germans. That's what they were calling the Americans, Teufelhundes, war dogs, devil dogs. And then other branches of service tried to adopt it, but it actually came from a black man just killing over 100 people with his bare hands. See, when we are in our power, when we're in our power, that, the spirit of the Most High, people think the spirit of the Most High, we're just going to be prophesying, speaking in tongues, things like that nature. People don't understand that when the spirit of the Most High was on David and when he was on Saul for that time frame, they were ripping people in half with their bare hands. Just think about that. Just think about that. But see, we in this society trying to say, well, no, it doesn't talk about that. It's love. It's love because you want to know why? If you know that you're on the other side of this judgment, well, I'm going to do everything I can to just kind of keep you neutralized because I know what's coming. If I see what I'm seeing right now, I know what's going to happen. So I wanted to provide this little document or this blogumentary or blog or vlog, whatever it's going to be called, because this is America's attempt to discredit the heroics of African Americans. We've always had valor. We've always had heroism. But you got to understand, if you show us in a negative light, or we will become what we see. A man is as he thinketh. So if I'm going to show you that you really didn't do anything in all these wars, then guess what? You're going to believe that you never did anything in all these wars. But when you actually understand that you did something in these wars, and that your contribution to anything always has an overarching impact on the way that basically national security is strategized, then you actually understand just how powerful you are and how we, as Israelites, have empowered this system to be a world system. This is scepter. The scepter is what? Never far. From what? Judah. This is Genesis 49. And that our what? Our necks would always be on what? On the backs. Our hands would always be on the back of the necks of kings. So we steer things. We don't have the control, the power necessarily, the overt, all-encompassing power, but we definitely steer control. So if we know that who we are, again, if anybody has served in the military, if you've had family members that have served in the military, you all know what those roles are for us primarily. Primarily, we're always going to be in some sort of support or combat support roles. And it's been that way since the Revolutionary War. But when America gets in trouble, like it always does, hey, we need these black folks on the front line. You sure you want to give them guns? You sure you want to do this? Yeah, because why? Because we've lost too many. You know, the sad thing is, this is a parallel from Jasher. This is a parallel from Jasher because the Egyptians knew that the Israelite men could fight. So they would kind of fight with the Israelite men, and then guess what they would do? Pull themselves back. Pull themselves back. See, in Jasher, what happened is that the Egyptians had fled and just left 200 Israelite men to face like 100,000. And those 200 Israelite men killed all of the armies that were coming after the Egyptians at that time. And what they did, they came back and they killed 5,000. I believe it was like 5,000 of the Egyptians. And then they got told, hey, slow down, hold your horses. We're not going to do that again. Okay. We're going to, we're going to chill with trying to, just throw you all up in the front line and leaving you like that. So that has gone on in our first captivity. It's now gone on in our greater captivity. And again, we see it till this day, even till this day. But all it does is that it shows you, look, we're naturally blessed with whatever we touch our minds to, our hands to, everything to. And honestly, the business of warfare is no different. So this is just a little tad bit of a teaching I wanted to push along to everybody. And again, if you like what Covenant Awakenings is doing, please like the video, share, and subscribe. And also visit us at covenantawakenings.com and become a Patreon. And I also have a Cash App for any type of donations. It'd be much appreciated. So we're doing this to increase our knowledge. We know who we are. We know where we're going. And now all we're doing, we're just reinforcing everything. Because the Most High moves, he moves in power that's not erratic. His power is decisive. His power is controlled. His power is orderly. So as I continue to bring these videos, look, I know in this dispensation, this era, it's coming sooner and sooner and sooner that these videos may not happen. Or these videos may populate or come on out, but it may not be where we're at in this present day and age because we're so close. So continue to lift each other up in prayer, continue to support each other because we are a family, and we're seeing that the most renowned and notable family on this earth is getting ready to come up on out of captivity. So shalom's, siemi, salama, shalom, my Israelite family, Gentile family that understands who we are. Blessings and peace, Israel.